dilemma and the struggle of getting this book republished. The book originally is coming out of a company called Writers and Readers. And it's very important for you to know something about the company. Writers and Readers was started by a African-American who grew up in Brooklyn and Harlem and did not learn how to read until he was 15 years old. Compliments of the miseducation system in New York City. And it was, his reading inspiration came from hearing people speak with knowledge, like Malcolm X and John Henry Clark and a whole host of other black intellectual activist kinds of people. And so Glenn Thompson is his name. And he picked up a book and started reading, and he said he never stopped reading after that. And it transformed his life. And it made him into a traveler, a world traveler. And he traveled all over the world, trying to gain knowledge and read about things. And he eventually settled in the late 70s, early 80s in England. And became interested in a number of things, and one of the things was that just being around great thinkers, progressive thinkers. And he was at Oxford University, and there was a small literary journal in Oxford that the graduate students and undergraduate students were trying to get out, and it was plain, boring, and so forth. And so he suggested to them that they do two basic things with the journal. One, not make it look like a journal, because the shelf life of journals are very short in bookstores then. And the second was to make it look more like a book and to put a provocative image on the cover. And that would spark interest in people picking up the journal. And so they had nothing to lose with it, and so they tried it, and it became England's biggest literary journal ever. It's called Granta, Granta. And if you go to a good bookstore, you'll see that journal. It's still in book form, it still has a provocative cover, and so forth. But that was Glenn's idea. Eventually, Glenn became a publisher's publisher. Like you have a musician's musician, you have a publisher's publisher. Glenn would have some young publishers come around and ask him questions and so forth. He has some very good ideas about how to publish things. And so while he was in England, he came up with the idea of a variation of a comic book, which eventually became what is called a docu-comic. And the first one he did, and people were saying to him, it'll never work. And people in England don't read those kind of things because they're literate people, and they would see themselves stooping down to a book with pictures on every page and so forth. It'll never work. But he had a feeling. And so his first docu-comic was Cuba for Beginners. And I think he said he did 1,500 copies, put them in a couple of bookstores in downtown London, and he said he had to go back to reprint within a matter of a couple of weeks. Cuba for Beginners, the illustrator was a South American by the name of Rios, and it became a very, very popular book. And he took off from there with Marx for Beginners, Trotsky for Beginners, Lenin for Beginners, and he went on with a number of other works, Philosophy for Beginners, which is still a big seller now. And he, for various reasons, decided to come back to the United States And when he came back to the United States, Glenn set up an imprint, Writers and Readers here, and a black children's imprint called Black Butterfly Books, and a black literary imprint called Harlem River Press. And because his whole idea was to continue with the For Beginners series, and then to begin to branch out into the wealth and depth of black literature of various kinds. And he noticed that there were very, very, very few books for black children. And so he said he was going to, do that. And I ran into him, I met him during that period when he returned to the United States, and we became good friends. And one day he said to me in, I believe it was like late 1994 or so, that he had a book coming out of Black Holocaust for Beginners, but the author, for various reasons, could not get it together, could not work on the book. And would I be interested in it? And I said, yeah, I'm interested in it, but I've got to think about it a little bit, because I had a lot of things in my mind over the years and collecting stuff around black history, and it's just a matter of getting committed to do the writing. And so I went back to him a couple of weeks or a month or so later. I said, yeah, I'm interested. He says, okay, fine. I said, well, what's the deadline? Deadline was like 9 months. I said, okay.